You know, for the last year or so, I've been thinking about putting an event together around creating events. And the reason is small businesses, big businesses, we're all trying to get more sales. We're all trying to create more customer engagement and loyalty. But many of the taps have been turned off to us over time. You take things like email, it's getting tougher to use email marketing to create new business. You look at social media, those algorithms are tightening. It's getting a little bit harder to put out content and have everybody see it, and you're spending more money to have less reach. The traditional mediums, as a good example, have been dying a swift death over decades. And most small businesses and even medium-sized businesses simply don't have the resources to afford doing that. And then you add COVID and all the other complexities. How the hell do companies, big and small, get a foot in the door, market themselves, create more sales, increase loyalty and engagement amongst their customers? And it's with this in mind that we created this event, an eventing event, so-called how to use events to drive sales and create customer loyalty. And so I'm sitting here with my uncle today, Mark Sham, and I'm so glad you're here with us because I actually got into events, Mark, directly because of you. I got my eventing university degree informally through you. And so I came to you a few months ago. We started speaking about putting this event together, and here we are. That's my end of it. How are you seeing this event, and why should people come through?
Well, Mark, I've seen this evolution in the last 20 years that I've been involved in the event industry. When I go back to our early events, we marketed them in some ways that almost seem quite quaint and almost laughable now. We went down to the newspaper, put an ad in the newspaper. In fact, we used to post flyers about events, right? And people would then post them back, with yes, I want to attend. So you can see how the world has moved on and how many avenues have been shut to marketing not only your business but your events.
Yeah.
And with that, we've seen a swift move in technology, which has been dramatic. And obviously, people now have an expectation of a very professional event, regardless of what you're doing. We've seen it during the pandemic with Zoom calls, where initially, everybody said, wow, this is wonderful. You can have a Zoom call. 6 months later, everybody was saying, how boring that we see a whole lot of faces staring into laptop cameras. And suddenly production becomes important. So as the world emerges after the pandemic, there's definitely going to be a further emphasis on events for the very reasons that you sketched.
Yeah.
The other mediums are closed. And I think that people out there must know what you and I know about events. It's a fast-moving world. If you do it wrong, you're actually tarnishing your brand.
Yeah. And Mark, I learned from you above all when you were my last boss and we ran events under your banner. And I really learned a lot about the curation of an event. And you really do live or die on the back of probably three instances. One, the actual quality of the content on display of that day, the production of it, and then the administration of it. When you break down those three things, they really matter. But one thing I'm convinced of is that, especially in 2022 and beyond, events, when done correctly, are like the ultimate frontier of customer engagement and sales creation, but not directly. What they do is they move people emotionally. You put a great event together where the content is world class. There is something. People don't have access to their phones like they do on a Zoom call. They're not distracted by a million things in a news feed like on social media, and they're not filled with hatred toward their inbox at an event. So I look at this and I feel like events really are this ultimate frontier of shifting people emotionally, but the absolute need, the thing you can't mess with is that you have to add more value. You have to create more value than you try to take away. And so even in that, I then got into public speaking, and I would watch at events that I speak at how poorly it's being done by people with money and resources and everything else, and it's still done poorly. And they didn't mean to, they just don't have that knowledge. So This is where, in my mind, I think that if we created an event that teaches how do you curate the content? What are you trying to achieve with the event? and so forth. That really matters. And now, because of technology, you can run an event in person, record it with these kind of camera angles that we've got here in studio, and then you get the most out of it. But one of the other reasons why I wanted to have the chat with you is something that you've taught me, and it is incredibly difficult to master, is the administration of the event. So maybe if I could just ask you to gleam in a highlights package, just some of the lessons learned and some of the things that you'll be speaking about around administration of an event, which people think of as like, yeah, it's important, but not that important.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's everything.
Yeah, it is everything. And you know, I've seen so much money wasted over years of companies, organizations organizing events. They've had everything covered. It's a wonderful event. They've got screens and cameras and speakers and heaven knows what, but nobody in the audience, or the wrong people in the audience. You know, you end up with as serial attenders to events, but not the decision makers. So, you know, whereas all the money was spent on getting the best staging, money was skimped on the administration, left to the secretary. Please make sure that everybody comes to our event. And people commit the ultimate, it's a human frailty. Your event is important to you, whoever you may be, and you think it's important to everybody. But what often happens is it's just another event in a very crowded diary. And you really have to do something to ensure that your 10 most important clients are there, right? So admin becomes vital. How are you managing the admin? And much like we know that cameras have improved and microphones and screens and heaven knows what else has been improved upon, so too as a technology that manages your guest lists and things like that. And that experience is very, very important. So admin is a critical part of events. Get that wrong and you might as well not have an event.
Yeah, and I really learned it again over and over, because with Suits and Sneakers, we've been running a lot of events, and where we were letting ourselves down early on was the administration, until you kind of came along and you enforced that on me again. You showed me how important it was. And even now, it's gotten even more important because, like you say, people are busy. It's easier than ever to create a Zoom event, or there's so much coming at people in general, so you really have to respect people's time. And then the administration isn't just necessarily linked to before the event, it's how the event occurs on the day, because you can literally win or lose someone by the experience of how they walk through the front door, how they treated. All of that is admin. Typically my thing has been to go, get a great speaker and make sure the production is world class, but from the second, obviously before the event, and then from the second someone arrives, all of those interaction points matter. But when you get it right, when you pull all of those things together, it makes the biggest difference.
And then, Mark, I'd like to throw something back to you, because I know that you, by now, have got, quite rightly, have got a great following as a speaker. You're good at it. But I'm sure you've spoken at events where you are not right for that target market.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen, my favorite one is, a big golf day, and you've got a whole lot of middle-aged guys there, and out comes a sort of a party band. And you want to say, look, these guys want to talk golf. This band wants to get you on the dance floor. Who am I going to dance with?
Yes.
So a huge amount of money is spent. And you must have been involved in some events that you thought to yourself, ooh, I'm not the right guy, a tattooed young guy talking to the wrong crowd. Eh?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think what happens, especially in these times, is people look at events in terms of what they could do. They have the ability to do certain things, and so they try to do all of those things. It's the weirdest thing to me that we don't start with the first question in mind, what are we trying to achieve? And it sounds like such an obvious question to ask, but most people don't start it. So they'll go, I want to run a big event, let me get a big name speaker. But just by starting with, what are we trying to achieve? What is the point of this? Where are we going with this? So yeah, there is a bit of a skill and a trick to lining up content with audience, with production, with administration. And these are some of the things and more that we'll be discussing at the event. But I'm 100% sure of this, Mark, that when you take all of those into account and you take the bigger marketing issues into account, I really believe that companies have got to start considering, especially now that COVID is blowing over for the most part, and people are longing for that connection, that in-person connection, We've got to start getting back to running great events, doing them well, and seeing them as possibly the best marketing tool we have. And then once you've switched people on from there, then you can use that attention that you've garnered, and you can sign them up to your newsletter and get them to sign up to your social platforms, and you can do the other things. But now when they're looking at your content come into their inbox, they feel differently towards you because they were at that event. And then I guess we even have to talk to consistency and so forth. But all of these things and more, I just know we have collectively used events in such a powerful manner to drive our businesses. And it's almost like you sit there thinking, if these people knew what we knew, they'd be doing it differently. And I think that's the genesis for this event.
Well, I think it's valuable. It is, as you say, one of the final frontiers. It's never going to go away. Events, now they could only go away when we were locked down, but they're back. And I think that people out there must use their events wisely. And if you've got a big event and you're not 100% sure that you are getting the best effect out of this, come along and listen to what we have to say.
Yeah, so that's the thing, guys. I just want to share with you, the details are obviously there. We will kind of put all of these details for how to register for the event. It's free. All of it will be linked to this video. So you literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I hope you come and join Mark and I as we share the details around how to use events to drive sales and customer engagement and loyalty.